Okay, welcome everyone who's joining us for the RSA crowdfunding webinar to introduce you to crowdfunding and the type of support we offer. My name's Jade Prentice. I work on the crowdfunding program with Alex, who's the Catalyst program manager. So that's everything under the Catalyst, which also includes our grant. So welcome to our online users for joining us and everyone here in the room. What I will start to do for everyone who's here in person is just send you this notebook, which I will also need to make notes from. So I hope it comes back to me just for you to write your name in. The best way to reach you, whether that's telephone number or email, so that we can keep in touch with you after the meeting. So our workshop is going to be an hour and a half. At 6:45, we will be joined by Andon Bosco, who's one of our successful crowdfunders from the past. Her project, which is ongoing, is Talk to Me London, and her crowdfunding campaign was Talk to Me London Day. And we'll be telling you a little bit more about that. As we go on, I'm going to introduce the basics of what crowdfunding is and what we do. And then Alex is going to give you more insight into the sort of work that's happened in the past and our insights from what works well and what doesn't work so well, and the type of support we offer you if you want to go forward with the crowdfunding campaign. I think just to begin, I want to get a sense if everyone can hear us. Yeah? Do you need me to speak up? Or just, if, no, okay, good. The workshop's being recorded, but if you have any difficulties, it's on. Thank you, Daniela. Or any questions, please write it in the speech bubble, as you can see Daniela has done already, so that we can pick it up as we go through the meeting. If you have any technical difficulties and have to leave us, I'm sorry, we won't be able to help you, but this meeting is being recorded so we can share our knowledge afterwards as we come back to you with a follow-up of what to do next. Okay, great. So, what I'm going to do now is just share our desktop. Are we showing it at the moment?
Yeah, we're not at the minute, no.
Okay. So I'm going to be sharing our screen here so that you can see the crowdfunding presentation we're going to talk through for half an hour before we're joined by Anne. So just to begin, this is what we're going to cover: what crowdfunding is, what the different types of crowdfunding are that are available for you, and why is the RSA involved in it? What have we learned from our fellows and from our own work makes the sort of foundations of a successful crowdfunding campaign, and then how we can help you if you want the RSA to help support you in a crowdfunding campaign venture. So let's just begin by looking at what crowdfunding is, because it is fairly new, although it's becoming more and more known through social media. It's a form of fundraising where you set a fixed financial target that needs to be raised over a set amount of time through an online platform. The crowd is the audience for that fundraising campaign who are going to back your project and help you reach your fundraising target. That crowd is made up of many different entities and includes people who are not known to you as well as people who are. It's time limited, so once you set your fundraising target, that's over a certain amount of time, and we'll go into this in a bit more detail. But for example, RSA Kickstarter, the maximum amount of time that a project can be live for in a crowdfunding campaign is 60 days. What other returns you can expect to get from a crowdfunding campaign that perhaps other forms of fundraising strategy don't give you? Well, first and foremost and universally, money, of course. But what crowdfunding does that other forms of fundraising might not do is it gives you greater market awareness of what your product or service is and how it appeals to your audience. Who your end users are likely to be the people who back your project. And when you develop this campaign and when you launch, if you're careful and responsive with your strategy, you get greater insights as to what your offer is than you might otherwise get with a different fundraising strategy. So knowledge about how your project will appeal to your target audience comes out of the work you do for a good crowdfunding campaign. And then another advantage is that by reaching out to an unknown audience through these online platforms, you're reaching a new base of support that you might not otherwise have connected with, who can help you not only financially, but scale up your project. Often people who back crowdfunding projects are not only prepared to give you a financial reward, but also potentially their time and their skills and experience as well. So what are the different types of crowdfunding that are out there? We have... Can I read that? Yes. Sorry, just to interrupt the presentation, just checking everyone's mute. All right. If you weren't muted that.
No, that's muted. I mean, she's muted.
Fine. Okay. So we're just going back to the presentation. Sorry, just this helps us make sure that we have no future disruptions. But just to go on, what are the different types of crowdfunding out there? We have keep it all. So that's when you set a fundraising goal, but even if you don't hit that target or not, you'll still keep all of your donations. So an example of a platform that offers that type of service is Indiegogo. And one of our fellows who crowdfunded with us didn't go with RSA Kickstarter. They chose to go with Indiegogo for that very reason. More common are all or nothing crowdfunding platforms. So, for example, just to run through the list here, we have Kickstarter, Crowdfunder, Indiegogo, who also do all or nothing. Seeders, Crowdcube, Syndicate Room, Crowdmission, and Start Some Good. Now, all of these different platforms are slightly targeted towards different audiences, and you need to have a look and explore these different platforms after our presentation here today, and have a sense of what fits best for you. Just to talk about what all or nothing strategy is, that's when you set your target and you absolutely have to reach it in order to receive those funds. If you don't manage to hit your target within the amount of days you've given your campaign, you won't receive any funding. But if you go over your target, you not only keep the amount of money up to that target, but everything you receive on top of that. So one of the reasons why the RSA has chosen an all or nothing approach as opposed to keep it all, which on the surface could seem, seem sort of more encouraging to you, is that we found that all or nothing offers greater incentive to your backers than a keep it all campaign. And here we have a graphic that you can see what's possible in 2 hours. So this is a crowdfunding campaigner that we worked with quite early on when the crowdfunding launched with the RSA, and they managed to, I think, was it 50%? They reached 50% of their target, and they had 2 hours left before their campaign closed. And they managed to hit their target simply by motivating their backers to spread the message to their networks and make their donations count. And you can see the way they did it is what's possible in 2 hours. If we don't reach that target, we don't get your backing, and that's a huge incentive, and one of the reasons why we've chosen all or nothing here at the RSA. So just to give you further information on the different types of crowdfunding that are out there, we've talked about the different types of donation strategy, but here you have something that gives you sort of different types of financial backing for your campaign. So you have donations based, where people are only expected to receive sort of a sense of well-being for having contributed towards a worthy cause. That's probably the type of fundraising that we're all familiar with. Rewards-based is something where you offer your backers a token, which could either be a product or service or a form of gratitude for supporting and financially backing your projects. And rewards are used as an incentive to encourage your backers not only to financially support your crowdfunding campaign, but perhaps financially back it at a certain level. So it's something that we go into more detail with our workshops, but rewards are pitched towards different types of backers to help you reach your target. Equity crowdfunding, which is when you're receiving equity shares in a company, and loan crowdfunding, where backers would be receiving an interest on loans. If we move into what crowdfunding is in the UK and globally, crowdfunding is very small still compared to what we project it to be in the very near future, but it's growing dramatically, and these are some stats from the past 3 years. So if you look at equity-based, that's probably the newest model out there. And you can see that from 2 million in 2011, equity-based crowdfunding has become more common, and it's already grown in 2 years to 28 million. Equally, rewards-based, that was 1 million of the market share in 2011, and that's now grown to 21 million in 2013. And donations-based, which is where your backers don't actually receive any reward at all for backing a project, that's grown from 215 in 2011 to 310. So we can see that donations-based is more familiar to everyone, so it's already very well established, but it's actually growing at a less exponential rate than rewards-based or equity. If you look at globally how crowdfunding is doing, it's big, it's huge in the US. 1 billion was raised on the US platform Kickstarter. That's 2013.
Australian,
So Kickstarter is just one company in that industry of crowdfunding in the US, and that company raised 1 billion in fundraising. Between 2009 and 2012, looking at the rate of growth, that's 2 years where annual growth rate for rewards-based crowdfunding grew by 524%, and equity-based grew by 114%. And why is the RSA involved in crowdfunding? Well, RSA Catalyst was launched to support our fellows projects, and first started as a grant which could be between £2,000 and £5,000 for fellows-based projects that delivered social impact. And you can see the RSA Catalyst program here. It's been running for 4 years, and awards our fellows projects that tie in with our own aims here at the RSA, both grants and non-financial support to help our fellows approach problems in society in new ways and deliver projects that achieve positive change and social impact. But why crowdfunding? Why have we brought that into the work that Catalyst does? Well, crowdfunding aligns with the RSA mission in these ways. One, it brings fellows together around great projects. A huge advantage of working with the RSA for your crowdfunding campaign is that we connect you with each other. You might all have experience or networks that you want to share that can help in your crowdfunding campaigns. And we also bring you together with fellows we have come across in our own work that are there to support you. It also is a way for us to dramatically scale up the type of support we can offer. As I said, our funding is limited. It's between £2,000 and £5,000 for an application. But with crowdfunding, you set your financial target. And in that way, we can help support you go for much higher fundraising goals. Crowdfunding, as we've seen in those figures looking at the growth rate in the past few years, is a huge and growing business, and we want to be a part of that, in line with the RSA, always wanting to be at the forefront of changing the community. And we also want to help people shape your project and businesses into a defining ask that creates social impact. That's a huge part of being a fellow and the RSA's work in general. And we think that the work you have to do to make a strong crowdfunding campaign and understand your product, your service, and your networks really helps you specialise your ask and your offer and the work you're doing towards that aim.
Fantastic. All right. I mean, I think what we'll do is we'll pause there and take. So yeah, to answer Luke's questions, the slides will be circulated after. But yeah, we'll just take some questions on that first.
And then and then once we've taken your questions, we're going to have another 15 minutes or so of Alex then explaining type of work that the RSA has done in crowdfunding to date, and the learning we've had from that. Crowdfunding is a year old here, and we've learned along with our fellows and have both positive and negative things to share with you about what makes a good campaign. So just before we can move on to that, does anyone have any questions about the basics of crowdfunding or that presentation? I'll let the online community give that some thought and spend some time writing questions if they have any, and just open that question to the room to begin.
I have a question. Did Kickstarter also not allow take all funding now, or do they have another difference between strict funding or is that Indiegogo who only has those two?
Indiegogo has those two, but RSA Kickstarter is only.
It's only
Kickstarter. Yeah, only.
All or nothing.
All or nothing.
Okay. And Kickstarter didn't used to be UK. It was only US until a while ago. Is that still the case? And is it only because the RSA has a special?
As much as we'd like to take the credit, they were, they already sort of opened it up to the. I think they certainly do allow Australian. I mean, the one thing to say is that people always kind of found a way around that also to put projects up. But yeah, there are now sort of 7 or 8 countries they no, yeah, unfortunately. Although we were sort of part of the reason they wanted partnerships because they were increasing their presence.
I do have a question. There are 2 projects for which I'm looking at fundraising options. And unlike, I think, many or even most of the supporting, they are existing projects, but it involves moving forward by defined steps. In one case, a quantum leap, taking it to the next level. I wonder if you have any comment on the fact that one is building on support, which already funding which already exists.
I think we'll probably come on to that in the part around some of the things we've learned around the campaigns today.
But I think as an overview, it would be fair to say that we can only take that as a good thing, rather than negative.
Right,
to help you have a strong fundraising campaign. And whatever your crowdfunding campaign is, it doesn't have to be the entirety of what your fundraising strategy is for the work you're doing.
No.
It might just be one strand of how you're hoping to pull in funds for whatever that project
That's how I
is.
would be seeing it. Yes, good. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions online that we can come to?
Is it better? Do you think that it's better to focus on an element that's kind of a smaller budget? How hard is it to fully fund a larger project?
It's sort of like how long is
like
it?
what? I guess what amount do you normally recommend for somebody to realistically achieve?
So I think we'll cover this.
Yeah.
This is a very good question that we'll return to.
I think what we'll do probably then, Daniela, is finish the presentation and hope that some of the answer to your question is covered by what Alex is going to talk about now. But then also to fully answer your question, what we need to do is go into more detail of what your project or interests are, so that we can get a ballpark and then take it from there. But because we've got a lot to cover before Anne comes along in 15 minutes, probably best that we don't go into your project in detail.
I think, and similarly with Luke's question there, it's best to ask for specific parts of the project budget or general funds. So I think, I'll crack on. The next bit.
We're not ignoring this
question. Not ducking the question.
We're pausing those questions and then dealing with them hopefully in this presentation and with some of the follow-up.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Okay, any other questions from those online? Okay, fab. All right. I'll just check that comment. Okay, fab.
Thank you. So we're back to sharing our screen now so we can go through the rest of the presentation where I'm going to hand you over to Alex.
Okay, all right, here we go. So yeah, where Jade said we're just under a year into things here. So we've had a total of 26 Fellows Ventures with our support go live, and 21 of those hit their target to raise £160,000. These tries to show the path of those. Essentially, it also shows the variety of the amount that's been raised. So the highest amount was 34,000 with our support. The lowest was 2,000. We've got with the ones we've supported, that's an 81% success rate, which compares very well to Kickstarter's average success rate of 44% and Indiegogo's of just under 20%. And what we do know from sampling the backers is that 22% of the backers of those projects that went live were RSA fellows, and then a further 12% have backed 5 or more Kickstarter projects. So we think, whilst we can't actually claim that we've got the fellows to that page because they might have been in contact already, and similarly that Kickstarter put those regular Kickstarter people in touch with and back the project, we do think that roughly reflects the kind of amount of support both we're adding and that the Kickstarter crowd has added these ventures. I think that's one really key thing when people come to crowdfunding, because when you read about crowdfunding in the press, they talk about the successes, they talk about the projects that have gone 1,000 times their original target, because by very nature that is news. Whereas actually the reality is that very, very few projects kind of take on and get such kind of viral momentum off themselves, and actually the amount that the crowd on an online platform such as Kickstarter, which has the biggest amount of users and backers, is most likely going to be around this sort of 10-15% mark. So that's definitely something that's worth highlighting. So what are the basics of a successful crowdfunding campaign? I'll go through 2 examples, very different examples. So Incredible Edible, what they've done is in a town in Todmorden, which is on the border of Yorkshire and Lancashire in the north of England, and they've, for the last 4 years, been planting edible food in a kind of guerrilla way be it the police station, front garden, local schools, the canal, like alongside the canal, and really they see that as a way, and out of that have come lots of new food businesses, lots of restaurants, some place for to increase the economy, but then it's also had these kind of well-being effects whereby people are eating more healthy food because they're growing seasonal things, they're more aware of the food that they're eating. They decided to run a crowdfunding campaign to really help spread the movement and get new incredible towns, as they call them. So one of the key rewards in this crowdfunding campaign was a £20 book about Incredible Edible Todmorden. So that provided that I think 300 of the 344 backers bought that book. So that is a sort of key pillar to this campaign. Some of the things where we came in handy, and actually this goes back to your point about can an established organisation do something, most definitely, if there are rewards that are going to be of interest to people. Another crucial thing here is that they had 900 contacts already. They'd reached 900 of their contacts by the second day of their campaign. So the benefit of being an established organisation, hopefully, is that you have people who know about your work who are already interested in it. So you've got that constituency to go to. Another factor in their success was that they had sort of 20 different blog posts up here, there, and everywhere talking about their work. back to the fellowship support bit, it was notable that when we have staff members dotted about the UK, when our staff member up there got into contact with the fellows who manage our Yorkshire region, they sort of had a hit list of, they needed to tweet it, email it, this, that and the other, and they got the 12 fellows on their team to do those 5 key tasks, and that actually was, at that point, the most successful day in terms of number of backers, and they raised £1,000 that day, so roughly 10% of their target. Then on to a different example, MacLab, it's lesser kind of volunteer-led organisation. This is set up as a business. It's turned over £200,000 with its base in Glasgow. They were essentially starting up, totally brand new, wanting to create a MacLab London. What is a MacLab? It's a space where they have 3D printing and other digital fabrication technologies, and they rent those out to businesses, but also provide access to schools so that the businesses can innovate with their products on this high-tech gear without having to buy the equipment, and so that the schools can teach some of their young people about this potentially revolutionary technology. They decided to run a campaign having been invited into a space in Somerset House. There was a group of people called Makerversity there who had an email list of around about 500 people who had been interested in creating a making space on this site. But unfortunately, the backers on that email newsletter list didn't actually want to commit and pay for access to this space. So some of their key rewards were £40 for a sort of half-day training session, or £200 for a year-long membership access to the space. And really, they put that out to that network, but only 28 backers, and £1,000 was raised in their first 10 days. They felt they needed £50,000 to make this happen. So really, that's not to say that you can't do something entirely new in a new setting with a new network, but either you need a network to be able to a ready group of people who are interested in the service product you're trying to sell, or the capacity to really push it out and meet those people during the campaign, and that was not in place here. So that he had all sorts of events lined up in Glasgow that he had to attend during this month, so he couldn't kind of stop that and then go to London to find these new customers. So but on the plus side, well, on the less downside, there was nothing kind of, he didn't put a huge amount of effort into this, and so he didn't lose anything. Indeed, getting even those 64 backers to pledge £8,000, whilst he didn't get the money, he knew that there's that demand there. He then used that as a case to some foundations, and he did a kind of quicker version, and he's still got the ability to communicate with all those backers that he got there through Kickstarter. So he did manage to cobble together a kind of quicker version of what he was aiming to do. So, moving on to how we help. So, we help first of all with the preparation of your crowdfunding campaign. So this is the introduction workshop in that graphic there. Then we have 2 other workshops, both an hour and a half, and one is focusing around getting your pitch right. So we ask you to bring along a very first draft, or maybe even 2 first drafts of your different pitches, and then put them to some fellows with expertise in crowdfunding, but also a room of people who are new to you, and so to kind of get their feedback on how well you're articulating what you're trying to do. Then it's about then the second workshop is about marketing. So that's about how you're going to get that pitch out there. And obviously the 2 are kind of intertwined. You need to know who you're aiming your pitch at, but we find it useful to kind of break it up in those ways. And the marketing workshop is a similar format. We ask you to bring along a kind of very first draft of how you think you'll get the word out, and then we'll add some new ideas on that. We have a fellow who runs a marketing agency who's provided some fantastic expertise. Then we'll look to make some connection to you. So we have fellows who volunteer their marketing expertise. When we know when you want to launch your campaign, we'll try and make an introduction to that marketing expertise to take that marketing plan that you built in the workshop and really add to it, make it into a day-by-day schedule once you've gone live. We'll also pass on lots of resources and templates that we've either built or other people have found useful, and we've kind of curated those. Then we help you with publicity. As I said, this has only so far generated 22% of backers, and that's the estimate. So don't expect this to do all the hard work for you, but we will tweet, Facebook, LinkedIn, and put you in our newsletter, and where possible, where there are RSA Fellows events on, we've had people standing with a live campaign in front of 150 people. We can't guarantee that because it depends when the events are, but we try and do our best there. So this is just another way of articulating the same thing. As I said, once you've done the introduction, we've got pitching marketing, and we make an introduction to a marketing expert, and then provide some resources and templates. I think actually the template in the bottom left there is one way we tackle, I think it was Daniela's question around what sort of target you should aim for. So in that little tool there, it's an Excel sheet that gets you to think about what the different rewards, if you're running a rewards-based campaign, what your different rewards are, and actually how many of those you'll need to sell or find backers for if you're going to reach a given target. So rather than plucking a target sort of out the air, what this encourages you to do is think about what kind of ambition you should have by how many people you think you'll have the capacity to get in touch with during your campaign, and how many of those are likely to actually get a pledge a reward. So I think that's one way in which through our workshops we actually try and help you arrive at a sensible target, and obviously the rewards and the kind of financial transaction of those awards is a critical factor. And then again, here's the publicity post launch. What we don't offer is we don't repeat what's already out there. So Kickstarter, being a platform that's helped over 50,000 projects raise $1 billion, have created quite a lot of kind of guidance and expertise about their observations on what makes a good campaign. So we'll signpost those types of things. The other thing that we don't attempt to do is have a complete and total knowledge of all the different crowdfunding platforms out there. There's a website that does that, helps you kind of think about the different platforms. The reason we went with Kickstarter, so one thing to say is that we give this preparation and publicity help if you go live on another crowdfunding campaign. But in addition to that, we have an area on Kickstarter because we feel that Kickstarter's criteria and how they get you to frame your project is very strong, and they've got the best and most successful crowdfunding platform in the world to back that up. We also think they've got a very slick interface which helps particularly our RSA fellows to actually pledge on the crowdfunding site.
How busy is the Kickstarter website, in the sense that if you're a new project that's on there, do they have this? Okay, these are the 10 new.
Yeah. So it is very busy. I think it's within 5 years, 50,000 projects, and that's the successful ones. So that's 10,000 a year, and that will have increased over time. So really, I would not bank on from the outset any help from Kickstarter. You'll hear from Anne shortly, who got profiled in her newsletter. That got her 400 quid. It didn't, totally change the world. I think, as I said, it's going back to this point of actually crowdfunding is known because of those really sort of amazing success stories, but actually you only really get picked up once you trebled your target. So that's not to say there are no people on Kickstarter, and our stats sort of prove that, about 12% we think. But yeah, this, until you really get that momentum, you are one among many different things on Kickstarter.
Can I add something on that
Yeah,
point?
please.
I actually had a discussion with someone who works for Indiegogo, and they use a similar search algorithm to Facebook.
Do speak up to the mic.
Sorry, they have a similar search algorithm to Facebook in terms of what comes up in the search, and they call it the go-go effect. So you have to optimize your reach and your network in order to get on their radar and to pick you up and actually appear in their search. So.
Yeah, so it's certainly.
How do you do that?
Well, it's quick progress. It's
The words that you use, I guess.
I think you've got to strategize your pitch, which is something we help you with as we go on, so that it's reaching your intended target audience through your own networks and the networks you hope to reach in your marketing campaign, rather than straight, unknown members of the crowd who you hope would just be browsing through whatever you choose as your crowdfunding platform. Because at best, people who happen to land on your crowdfunding page and then like your idea and then back it with no prior marketing awareness of what your crowdfunding campaign is, that at best that's going to be a infinitesimally small fraction of the backers.
Until you start getting to that doubling your target, then it becomes a story in itself.
Yeah.
I think another factor here is 0%, and between 0% and 20%, essentially you have very little credibility to an outsider who doesn't know you or your project, because they don't see, because of this all or nothing thing. They just what's the point in spending 15 seconds to back it, because it's not likely to reach its target. So trying to make sure that you've got that kind of lined up through your existing network is really crucial, so that you have some kind of credibility. When pushing, then you try and push the message out wider, and then hopefully people will start picking it up of themselves.
Early, again, it's we go into more detail in our workshops, but early take up and momentum is key. You're more likely to get that from your personal networks and have that lined up, and then from then it's cascade effect.
Yeah. Any other questions really on that second chunk? So returning to hopefully the how much question. Just to touch on that clearly the big variables there are the rewards, and whether that's a proposition that people actually want, and also your capacity to get the word out and push the word out, and also an existing network that makes that job easy. So those are some of the key points in setting your target. But ultimately, it's there are no sort of there's plenty of variables in there's no right or wrong target, and it does depend on those things. I think the average on Kickstarter is around about $20,000. The average on equity crowdfunding is around about £100,000, and that's because people are taking a financial stake in a business that are hoping to sell it in the future, and so you're already talking about people putting the average amount that people put in is a lot higher when people are taking putting equity investments in.
And then also what we haven't talked about is what happens when you go over your target. So all of you will be working, I imagine, on projects where if you set a financial target for fundraising, you could still do with a bit more money, and you have a vision of what more funding can go towards. So that's when stretch targets come into play. So for example, an RSA Kickstarter, we had that project based in Shoreditch. I can't remember the name of it, but its target was in the teens. What was it? It was about £10,000, and it ended up achieving £90,000 over time.
So that was a fellow who'd been advising in some of our workshops before we started our support. He quadrupled his target, and he made it look. You can make it look on your Kickstarter page like you can advertise a new target. So it's definitely not all over when you reach your actual minimum target to get the money. You carry on going. You can make it look like you've got this target.
So, for example, we have a crowdfunding campaign that's live on RSA Kickstarter at the moment called A Cash to Innovation for Young Pioneers. So it hit its targets yesterday. Its target was £11,000. Now, I know that the cashier is now appealing to all of its backers to help it hit £15,000, which is £4,000 over its target, to help them, in this case, sponsor a couple more young people. So you can always scale up what your funding ask is over and above your target, but we advise, obviously, that you do that strategically when you're close to hitting it.
Can I ask you a question about that? It's not like Won't to Be a Millionaire, right? That if you reach the target and then you set a higher one, that you lose everything?
No, not at all. So that's a really important question, because I can imagine that's an easy one to assume if you're not already familiar with crowdfunding. Once you set your target, that's fixed. That will not change once your campaign is live. You cannot decrease your target, you cannot increase your target. Your target is your target. You can set surpass you're going to reach it. You can give your backers further incentive to donate if you think that more funding could help you scale up.
So, and just to show, where have I gone? Just to show everyone here what we're talking about. Here's the original target of 25,000, but he put this graphic in that sort of showed that he had greater and greater ambition. So when and you can change your video once it's up there as well, talk about a new target. So the actual target here, as far as Kickstarter is concerned, never changed. But for him, it did.
And I think actually that graphic has changed over time too. So you can give information on what each stage of that funding provides.
Yeah.
And we certainly would advise you to do that to give your backers incentive. I've just noticed we've got Anne, I think, online, and Don Bosco from Talk to Me London. So thanks, Anne, for joining us. We're now going to unmute you.
Well, were there any other questions, first of all, just about that last bit about our support and some of the learnings so far?
Well, I was just going to ask something. At least for one of the projects I'm thinking of, quite a lot of the people that we're writing to are not necessarily particularly techie. Reading people that are not necessarily very techie. Some of them would probably, they might actually not click on the link to a crowdfunding site. They might read the email. It might be easier for them to reply to an email and say, yeah, I don't need to tell you online, but actually I'd be quite willing to give you £100. Does that, and then probably write you a check. Does that sort of get in the way, or what's the state?
So there's nothing that stops people, as far as, well, I know that's not the case, but there's nothing to stop Jonathan, who created this project, from putting £80,000 into his own project.
No, that's not what I meant. I meant,
so the point is, you could ask checks to come in to you or your organisation, and then put the money up here to help with this campaign.
And then can you say that is actually part of what you achieved through your campaign? And so it didn't actually all have to come through the crowdfunding website in order to be considered a success.
So
in relation to
what I'm saying is, so to be clear, if he set a target of £25,000, he got 20,000, and then checks for another 10,000.
Yeah.
Unless he put those 10,000 checks in his account and then put 10,000 on the platform, you wouldn't get a penny because you have to reach your target. So you
get the checks and then you put all the money into receipt by check.
Yeah, it seems a funny way of doing it, particularly when all crowdfunding platforms take a cut on what is raised.
Ah, yes.
Now, but this taps into a previous question that we had. I think sort of Luke's question around specific parts of the project budget, or whether you ask for general funds. I think what you need to do, it's fine to say in your crowdfunding pitch, my target is this because I've already got 5,000 in the bank, or I've already got 10,000 that helps me deliver this thing. But people just want to know what your money, what the target will go towards, what it will be spent on. So as long as there's kind of, if you can get your offline written checks in before the start of the crowdfunding, you'll say, okay, we've got £5,000, we need to get another 5, otherwise we won't be able to do this thing that we wanted to do for £10,000. So I think as long as you're kind of clear and transparent about what you're doing, whether it's on the platform or off the platform, I appreciate it can get a bit silly, feeding money around, but I hope that answers the question.
It sort of does.
It's not a clear cut. I mean, you could do it either way. Yeah.
I have one more question. Do you help in defining that target? Because I went through the list of the projects that you had run before. Stood out there, which had like 500,000 goal or something, and it raised a paltry few thousand.
Yeah.
So
it's a really fantastic question, which I'm going to let Alex answer.
So that particular group, it's a very interesting example. They raised £33,000. The advice in our pitching workshop was to not go for a £500,000 flexible funding target, where everyone knew that if they made 33,000, they'd get that, and that's fine. We advised him so he wanted the money to employ 3 developers at £80,000 for a year, and he wanted to use the campaign to find those best developers. We said, don't do that. Get a quote from some sort of developer, say this is what functionality we need, because this will then help expand our project by X, Y, and Z scale, and actually rein in the ambition a bit, and then have £5,000 as a stretch target and maybe go for £100,000. And our advice was that would be a more effective way of raising money, and I'm certain of that. They got fantastic press in FT, Time Out, lots of different places, and they had 40 events during their crowdfunding campaign where they were talking about it, a good set of rewards. So I think they didn't use the target as a motivating factor for the backers. They didn't properly set out the list of things that they wanted to deliver with their money. And when Jade touched on it earlier when talking about the difference between the all or nothing or the keep it all, and I think one of those is the kind of transparency about what happens if you don't reach your target. So if you don't reach your target on all or nothing, people know there's nothing going to happen. If you don't reach your target on a keep it all thing, who knows what's going to happen? You haven't set out what you're going to spend with £30,000. So it doesn't really motivate people to go from 30 to 50 or to 100. Yeah. So I think it's really important to have that clarity about it, and it might be that you're able to deliver more, and that's even better because you managed to cut costs, you managed to get some excellent people on for free. But to have a kind of minimum, this is our current budget of what we would do if we hit the target is important.
I think because we invited Anne to speak at course 2,
yes.
Do you think now, if anyone has any more questions, we can cover that at the end of the session? Yeah? Okay, so we're going to hand over to Anne Don Bosco now and just introduce you. And if you have any more questions, please, online users, write them in chat and we'll pick them up towards the end of this meeting. And then everyone in the room just have a think and we'll do our best to come to it. So, Anne, I'm going to take you off mute and introduce you to everyone. So, welcome, Anne.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I'll just let you introduce yourself and what it is you want to talk about today, and then when you're ready, I'll show the video. Just give me a shout.
Cool. So we were one of the projects that did a Kickstarter campaign in April. So the organisation that I run is Talk to Me London. And so what we try to do is tackle social isolation, but in a really fun way where we just encourage conversations between strangers. So that's through events or kind of through a badge which encourages people to know that the other person is friendly and they can start a conversation. And so through kind of the stuff that we do, we're trying to improve well-being, increase community connectedness, and reduce isolation, but we're doing it in a very fun, light-hearted sort of way. So we came to the RSA and kind of submitted an application. I think when we initially submitted it, we kind of wanted to test different ideas. And one of the things that we got feedback on is to kind of center it around a point and make it something which felt like it was something that was tangible. So one of the ideas that we'd also been considering before was the idea of a Talk to Me day. So it's a day to celebrate conversation and have lots of different things like picnics and socials and debates and so on. So we just done that day, I think it was about a week ago now, and we managed to successfully raise the money. And we had quite a good campaign. So as Alex mentioned, we were featured in the Kickstarter's global newsletter, which was kind of completely random and was quite nice. And we got some good press and time out, and we managed to hit our target. So our target was 6,000 and we managed to raise 8,000 in total. And I think for us, a lot of what we were trying to do was about raising awareness. So it was actually a really good way of just spreading awareness about the cause and the campaign. And we had lots of people who kind of got in contact and didn't necessarily donate, but offered in-kind services or offered volunteering or things like that. So for us, it worked really well. So I think, Jade, if you want to play the video, you can start with that.
So everyone online, I'm just going to show Anne's campaign video for the crowdfunding campaign for Talk to Me London Day. If it doesn't stream properly for you, we have had problems in the past. I can share this file tomorrow when we do our follow-up of the meeting, but here it is, and I hope it works properly.
London. It's known for being one of the most diverse cities in the world. With people from all sorts of different backgrounds, we have so much we could share and learn. But in London, we don't talk to each other. Perhaps this is the reason why a quarter of Londoners say they feel lonely often, if not all of the time. So why should we talk?
Yeah, I think when you talk to people, you have such different conversations. Some of them can be funny, some of them can be kind of sad and interesting and touching.
Some of them can be informative.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of different reasons to talk, and we're kind of not telling you what to talk about, but we kind of know that there's something good about it.
The act of talking is so simple that it is really kind of connected to larger community society problems, really, community connectedness, isolation, all those kinds of things. But actually, it's at the core of human interaction is talking to people. I think, especially in large cities like London, there's just a kind of a lack of that and a fear of the people around you that kind of arises from the number of people around you.
So why have you started a Kickstarter campaign?
So we're trying to raise money for a Talk to Me London Day in August. So it's going to be quite an exciting day where we're going to try and get people talking to each other in London.
Yeah, it'll be one day in which it is okay to talk. Talking is a good thing, and yeah, everyone will be encouraged to talk to people they don't know.
Yeah, and so we'll have a badge, so the Talk to Me London badge, and it lets people know that you're friendly and open to conversation. So you won't write and you are happy to talk to someone. So it's just a little signal to let people know that it's okay to talk to each other. And then we're going to have lots of different activities. So we might have big art installations
book club on the tube.
We might have flash mobs to get people talking. We could have picnics,
dinner. There's so much that we want to do and we think we can do on the day. We think it'll be really kind of exciting and hopefully the beginning of something big. We'd like to repeat the day and kind of grow the day on a yearly basis. We also think it will be a really important way of kind of putting the importance of talking on the agenda, and raising awareness of the fact that so often we don't talk and why.
Can you guys hear me now? Nope. Oh shit. I think I've lost you. I can't hear anything.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Hello.
Okay, right. We will go back to and so sorry about the technology there. Hopefully you got a flavour of the video.
Yeah. And I could see that some of you online were doing something which was great, which is just having a look at Anne's Kickstarter page and streaming the video yourself online. So do that after this workshop as well. Just have a look at it because it is a really strong video and well worth seeing.
I mean, it would be great if you could talk through sort of your experience of the campaign itself now that people know a bit about it. And how it helped you, to deliver the day.
Yeah, definitely. So what I was planning on doing is kind of talking about the things that we kind of discovered as we were planning the campaign, then the kind of way we thought about structuring the page, and then tips for during the campaign, and then a bit for afterwards. So I think best with planning, like as much planning as you can do as possible in the beginning is really, really important. So we kind of started by looking at other campaigns which were similar to us, so kind of socially minded campaigns on Kickstarter, just to see the kind of way they'd laid it out, which ones had been successful compared to which ones had been not so successful, and kind of use that as the way to structure how we wrote our page and so on. And the other thing was kind of we wrote the video and the page text at the same time so that we could kind of make them mirror each other, and kind of what we said in the video would be supported by what was under the page. And then the other thing we thought about was, so for example, with the video, we started with the social need. And I think you can kind of go one of two ways. You can either start with the idea or you can start with the social need. And I think for us, we kind of decided to start with the social need because it's not necessarily clear. Or I think if we had just started with talking and like making it fun, people wouldn't have really grasped why it was so important. So I think we kind of based that on the feedback that we'd had before, where people had not understood the campaign for that reason. So I think try and feed in those that feedback that you've got before. And I guess linked to that is as much feedback as you can get is really, really useful. So the RSA was really useful for us in terms of both how we pitched the idea as a whole, and also the text and the video and so on. And I think also trying to send it to different types of people. So if you think about your friends and family, or kind of friend of a friend who's never heard of your idea, and kind of think about the people who you think might donate to the campaign, and try and send it to a couple of people from each of those different backgrounds so that you can get feedback, because I think you definitely do get different feedback from lots of different people, and sometimes it's quite hard to figure out which to go for, but try and think about it in terms of who are you mostly targeting and focus on that group of people. And so the other thing within that is kind of, when we thought about our target audiences, we did a communications matrix, which I think the RSA will probably provide you with. And so we kind of thought about it as, so who are all the different people that could donate? So we've got friends, family, like close friends, then like people who might stumble across it on Kickstarter, people who might read about it in the press, like organisations that we know about. And for each of those groups, we tried to think about, okay, what's the key message that would make them give, and what's the best channel in which to reach them, and also how many of these people are there, how much do we think they'll give? Because I think through thinking about that, it helped us to realise that we probably needed, say, 20 lots of £5 and like 3 lots of £100 or whatever it is. And it also kind of helped us to think about it in terms of, so I think one of the stats that Alex might have told you is a third comes from your friends and family, a third from their friends and friends, and then a third comes from people who just kind of wander across your project. And I think that was really useful for us, because originally we were thinking about doing these PR stunts and doing press releases and so on. And then we kind of moved away from that, because we thought, actually, if we're going to focus on our friends and family and so on, it makes more sense to target those people in a different way, because they're not really going to listen to the stunts or hear about it and donate because of that. And what happened with our campaign, because it got picked up, is that we actually got featured in Time Out and Radio 4 and so on, and a couple of places like that. But what we found is that didn't actually lead to as many donations. So the strongest donations were originally from that base. And I think during the campaign, we got a lot of inquiries for press, and we ended up spending a lot of our time on that, which I don't think was necessarily the right way to do. So I think another thing within that is just make sure you think about what your target is, and for that period of time, it's just about raising the money. And even though awareness is important and the other stuff might seem as exciting, I think it is important to think about what's getting you the money and focusing more on that. And so again, within the planning stage, so thinking about those core messages. So one thing that we thought about for friends and family was it's stronger to kind of get our close friends and family in the beginning. So we sent out a message to all of them on the first day, like personal messages, and said, can you help us get to like the initial point? Like, this is where we really need your help. Like, you're the most important people to us. And I think that worked really well for friends and family, because I think it made them feel like they were more important and they had to donate with immediacy. And then what we found after that was kind of people forgot and donated later on. And then we had kind of more of a decline where people just weren't thinking about it, or it just wasn't as much on their mind. There was no urgency, especially like once we'd hit our target. And so what we decided to do is kind of do friends and family at the start and then do them again at the end, because during the middle there was less urgency for them, whereas they responded well to the kind of urgency in terms of help us to get this started, and also you only have like 2 days to donate, do you still want to donate? So I think that worked really well for us. The other thing within that is kind of, if you can, try and draft emails and any of those sorts of communication. So if you're going to do a press release or things that you're going to put on your Facebook, as much as you can draft beforehand, the easier it will be, because I think we kind of underestimated how long it would take to contact each person. And so the other thing that we did is we kind of created like a massive list of basically everyone that we knew, so every single person who was a friend or family who we were going to contact, and then put a person next to them who was going to be the main point of contact. So Polly, the other co-founder, and me had some mutual contacts, so it was good to kind of say, okay, you contact this person, I'll contact this person. And then within that grid, it kind of also had a status, so we could put like asked once, asked twice, donated, and so on. And so that was a really good way of kind of keeping track on who we were contacting. And also I think if you don't do that before, I think if you got to the day, it's kind of, you just do the people that you remember, and you don't search your mind as well to think about all the people that you could ask. And I think also within that we included organisations and organisations who we could ask to tweet on our behalf or share the message in their newsletter. And I think that was quite a good way of getting it out there, because I think with press, people often read like a newspaper and kind of ignore it, and there's like quite a big link. Whereas I think with organisations that we knew, so for example, we knew like Student Hubs, who's a big student charity, or like Action for Happiness. And I think with those organisations which had similar values to us and kind of agreed with the concept, it was much easier to kind of appeal to a target audience who was slightly more likely to be proactive or like interested in the campaign and donate because of that. And then, so when we were kind of looking at the structure of the page, so if you just, Jade, would you mind showing?
Yeah, go on the page. So I'm just going to take us all to the Kickstarter page for this campaign. Okay.
Cool. So just as another tip for if you reach a stretch target, one of the things that we realised is that it takes quite a bit. So if you load the page, it takes quite a bit before you can scroll down to the image at the bottom. So we changed our display picture to have the image that says like help us reach our stretch target. And then we had this thing below which kind of said what our stretch targets were and helped us to kind of explain what we'd get for it. And I think one thing that we didn't really do is think about what our stretch targets would be before we launched the project. And I think that kind of made them perhaps a little bit weaker, and people, I think it's different for every idea, but I think for ours it didn't feel like people were getting enough for the stretch targets, and so they were kind of like, oh, but you've already reached your target. And I think within that, the other thing with friends and family is that we found once we'd reached the 6,000 target, it was much more difficult to get them to donate, because they assumed that we'd kind of already got there, and so there were a couple of people who were like, oh, but you've already reached your target, like why do you need more money? So it's good to kind of get that clear. And then so if you scroll down, Jade.
Yeah.
So we kind of started with a quote from Boris just to kind of give some credibility to the idea and make people think that it wasn't just some random idea, and I think that helped for a lot of people. And then we kind of break it down as the issue and the need, and within that we kind of tried to keep it as simple as we could, and we used bullet points and tried to break it up with pictures as much as we could, just as a way to kind of make it seem more friendly and encourage people to read it. And so we created also these GIFs, which our designer did for us, which I think also helped to liven it up. And the other thing that we did was kind of do pictures of the rewards with little captions and also quotes from people who were supporters, so people who'd taken part in our pilot, or also people who sent us messages as we were going through the campaign. And I think that external verification is a really good thing. So whether that's through putting up the places where you've got featured in the press, or whether that's through putting up quotes that you've had from people, I think that just kind of helps people to think, oh yeah, it is a good idea. It's not just me who thinks it's a good idea. Because I think one of the things about Kickstarter is the power of the crowd, and when people donate more when they think that everyone else thinks it's a good idea as well. So the more that you can kind of do that through your page, I think the more useful. The other thing we thought about with our rewards, so it's just really being quite strategic about it. So if you look at our rewards, so we've got a £5 reward, and so that was for people who we thought might just be random backers, liked the idea but probably wouldn't donate that much to it. So we had a lot of people through the Kickstarter newsletter and just people who we didn't know donate that amount, and so we offered a free reward, which was a shout out on our website, but that really helped a lot of people to donate to that. And one person messaged me saying that it was quite a good thing to do for the people in the US. And then next, so we put the £15 one, which was Talk to Me London badge, which was our iconic kind of thing. And so by going from £5 to £15, we tried to think about it as, okay, so the majority of our friends and family, okay, they'll probably put in £10. So how do we push them to give a bit more? Well, why don't we put £15? Because then they'll assume that if you're not giving £5, then you should probably donate £15 to get the badge. And then, so for the £25 one, again, we tried to add a few more ideas to it. And I think with all of this, the way we try to think about it is, who are the people that are going to donate? How much are they going to donate? And how can we convince them to donate a tiny bit more? So, for example, we had a gold Talk to Me badge because we thought some of our friends, like close friends, might want to donate about £25-30. So we thought if they were probably the ones who'd want a gold Talk to Me badge. So we kind of tried to shift them to donate a little bit more by making it one of the £35 rewards. So I think as much as you can, try to be strategic in terms of what the rewards are and who the people are who are donating, and try and encourage through your rewards to kind of shift them up one level from what they're donating. And then, so with, let me just see. Yeah, so then during the campaign, so as I mentioned, like one of the things that we found was it was quite hard to kind of keep the momentum. So I think as much as you can, try and plan before, and also build in time to kind of respond to things and talk to your team in terms of what you're going to do next, because we had a really big spike at the beginning and then kind of found it a bit more difficult to keep the momentum going. So if you can kind of think about things, so whether that's organising like an event for people who've already donated so far, or whether it's through like doing something which is a new piece of research, but I think as much as you can think about that, the better. And then, so in terms of social media communications, I think it's really useful to kind of get yourself and your volunteers and so on to change their display pictures or their Facebook banner, because that kind of helps a lot of people to notice, especially when you've got a lot of people changing it. One of the other things that we considered was a thunderclap. So I've heard quite a few people talk about it within the context of Kickstarter. And the way that a thunderclap works is that you ask all your friends and volunteers and so on to sign up and write their own message, which kind of says like, oh, Kickstarter, like Talk to Me London is raising money for Kickstarter. And you sign up to this website, and then the website automatically posts the message at the time that you've specified. So basically everyone who's signed up to that website will post at the same time. And so the reason that people do it is because it works as a way of kind of just increasing the reach that you have at the same time. And I think it's useful because, say you're one person who knows two people who are involved in Talk to Me Day. If you see it twice in your newsfeed, you might be more likely to pay attention. And I think the other thing is it encourages people to share it who might not have previously shared it, because it feels like they're part of something or whatever. But one of the things that we did find with Thunderclap is that we tried to do ours, I think, 2 or 3 weeks into our campaign. And because we'd already been asking our friends and family to donate and been asking them to share it and so on, it kind of felt like it was another ask. And so we didn't like the fact that it was kind of confusing the message and kind of asking for 2 things, because then it made it seem like we were asking a lot from them, whereas I think we decided in the end just to focus on donations and ask people to donate. But I think if we had thought about it before, or you guys, when you're thinking about it, one way to do it could be to kind of get people to sign up to a Thunderclap which launches on the first day of the campaign or the second day of the campaign. So that's kind of the first ask for them. And then when the campaign's launched, you can kind of ask them to donate without it being seeming as though they're two asks at the same time, if that makes sense. And the other thing is just like on your personal Facebook, make sure you keep people updated, and also actually on the Kickstarter page, so updating people when things happen. So when you receive like a good message of support, whether when you get featured in the press or anything like that is good to think about. And I think we weren't actually that good at updating people and I think what we found when we were writing the updates was it was difficult to kind of keep the message new, because we kept saying, thank you, we just need a little bit more to go. So I think if you can think about things that would be in your updates, so planning like a viral video or planning like a bit of research or just something that kind of keeps it a bit more interesting, I think that's definitely a useful thing to do. And then, okay, so the other thing was, so we got a lot of people contacting us during the campaign, and some people related to Kickstarter and the rewards, and then other people who just wanted to ask questions, so like art students and so on. And I think one thing about it is that we spent a lot of time replying to people, and it was quite like a big job when we were doing the campaign. And I think it was good in some ways because some of the people that talked to us on Kickstarter ended up donating. But I think with kind of requests which seem quite time consuming and not necessarily going towards you reaching the money, I think just tell them that you don't have enough time at the moment to answer all their questions and then come back to it later. And then so the final thing was just after the campaign, like keeping in touch with the people who supported. So we had a drinks event where we invited people who'd backed to come and meet us and so on. That was really good, and it helped as a way of kind of keeping people involved. And we also added all of our backers to our mailing list, and have continued to kind of keep in touch with them through that, and just like doing regular events and continuing to engage them, because if you want to like crowdfund in the future, or if you kind of want them to be involved in the project, it's really good to kind of keep them involved. So I think, yeah, that's everything.
Thank you, Anne. So I hope all of you found that a really useful insight into the workings of a good crowdfunding campaign. We're going to have 10 minutes now for questions, so if everyone online can just have a think about what those questions would be for Anne or for Alex and myself, we'll do our best to answer. Just Anne, while everyone's just having a quick think about that, sometimes I find that our fellows can be a little bit too optimistic on how little time needs to be spent on marketing a crowdfunding campaign once it goes live, because crowdfunding as a platform is a marketing tool, but in terms of like the hours you invested day by day in your campaign once it launched, what would you say?
So Polly and I were the ones leading the project, and both of us have full-time jobs, but I would say pretty much every day, so like most evenings and quite a lot of weekends we would spend doing Kickstarter stuff, and I think that was a lot just kind of like replying to things or like keeping people involved. I think it wasn't through the entire campaign, but there was like, we did try to keep our evenings free, and we did end up filling them with trying to do Kickstarter.
That's very much the feedback we've got, that it feels like a full-time job and you're just living and breathing it once you're live.
Definitely. Yeah.
I've had a question there, which is, what do you think is the optimum time a campaign should run?
I mean, I think it's quite difficult, because I think when we were first thinking about ours, we thought, okay, the more time you have, the better, because, you know, you have more time then to market it and so on. But I think one of the things we found is, as I've mentioned, like we kind of had a dip in the middle. So I think actually 30 days is kind of the right amount of time, because it felt like you had enough to push without being completely overworked, and you kind of had the kind of urgency, and it felt like a month is quite a finite amount of time, so people felt like they were still part of something and involved and still interested.
Yeah, and certainly that echoes the learnings that Kickstarter have had, and whilst they allow a maximum of 60 days, they generally encourage 30, because essentially sort of 15 days to get the word out, and then 15 days to repeat the word to those same people. And then anything in between, if you had another 15 days and another 15 days. It's kind of just repeating, or a lull. So yeah.
And Alex, have you found that with that's the case regardless of the amount of money that people are trying to raise?
Yeah, I think the only outlier we had was the one who had 40 events lined up, and there's an obvious rationale for making it longer there because you had people coming through the door to events that they were running. So yeah, but no.
We did have a crowdfunding campaign that was running this summer that unfortunately didn't hit its target, and it was 35,000 in 35 days.
Yeah, I think
you could, I think looking at it from the surface, you could think, well, that's a big target for RSA Kickstarter. Maybe they should have given themselves more time. But although it's sort of something that we need to think about now in the learning of is actually did the campaigners set their rewards appropriately, or and that's sort of the feedback. There's many things to think about, not just the length of time you have to set a fundraising target, the impact, the likelihood of
I think the one project I was reading about yesterday, Kano, which is a fun computer sort of deconstructed, and they had a £100,000 target and hit it within 18 hours because of the people they had lined up. So they've done the work in advance. And if they had crowdfunded for 5 days, they would have still hit their target. If they crowdfunded for a day, they would have still hit their target. So it does depend on the capacity, before and the kind of how far along as a kind of product it's been tested and already kind of marketed. Any other questions?
For Anne?
The other thing just on that, sorry, Alex, just building on that is, I think if with individuals, it's easy to kind of get people on board. But one of the things that we tried to do halfway through the campaign is, so Innocent Drinks were interested in kind of providing drinks for the day and giving pro bono. And so we wanted to kind of get more brands involved and use it as a way to get people involved. But I think the trouble with organisations is that they move much slower. So if you're mainly fundraising from individuals, I think it makes sense to kind of keep it around 30 days. But if you're targeting organisations, then do prep in advance, or otherwise maybe it makes sense to keep it a little longer.
This recent one, the £35,000, he was very much in that camp. He thought he was going to get probably 2/3 of that total from corporate sponsors of what he's trying to do, and he clearly hadn't kind of got the decision made in all of those organisations. So yeah, that's a really valid point.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so Anne, how much of your 200 backers were known to you before the campaign and how much came to you during the campaign?
So I think it was probably about 50% of each for that. And I think we were quite surprised by how many people did donate who we didn't know. But I think even having spoken to some of them afterwards, they were actually friends of friends. So I think it might be a little bit more than that were kind of known through our networks, but it was about 50% of people who we didn't know who pitched in stuff.
Thank you.
So we don't have any questions online yet, so please keep writing if you do have any questions for us.
Or wave and unmute yourself.
Yeah. Are there any more questions in the room that we can do with?
I wanted to ask, I don't know who's best to ask about this, but when setting rewards, is there any indication of what you generally prefer? There's equity, obviously. I don't know if that's even possible.
Not on Kickstarter.
Okay, so maybe this is more relevant to Crowdcube and other platforms. But there's equity, which is one option. There's a lot, which works on many platforms. And then there's physical rewards like products, T-shirts. And there's social recognition. I saw their project, they had this little banner or badges. I'm curious in general, what's the way to look at all of that? When I'm setting up a project very ambitious and I don't know what type of reward it would be,
It always has to be geared specifically towards what your project is.
I mean, so your example is something that creates fresh water from seawater. You know, if you're not planning on selling the product through, so yeah, the obvious kind of first way is do it rewards, sell the product, you know, as your reward, as your main reward. But if you're not going to be able to reach your, you know, target audience, the, you know, rural wherever you're trying to actually deliver this, then you've got to start thinking about what do the networks you're going to be able to reach want. So I would have thought with your project, there's going to be a big kind of social recognition thing of, you know, helping this fantastic new bit of technology improve the lives of people here, there, and everywhere. I would have thought there's also, because you've got a strong business model behind it, there's also possibly to go down the equity line. I would have thought, I mean, one, and I think we heard it from Anne, but the kind of see your network or the project's network as a focus group for these. So, you know, say give them a, you know, if we went live tomorrow, would you want £100 equity share, £10 thank you and video, or you know, so try and do your research as much as is feasible, so that you have some kind of, because, you know, there's no point us trying to pontificate or make up general rules that aren't there. You know, there's been, you know, hundreds of thousands raised on equity, on, you know, on awards. So it really is kind of specific.
And I think it just helps also to kind of break out the different groups. So as I was saying, in terms of who's going to donate, are they kind of someone who is your friend? Okay, well, figure out how much they're roughly likely to donate and figure out a reward that works for them. So that might be a product or a recognition type thing. Then think about it as, okay, there might be people who are going to donate quite a lot for equity. So then make the higher reward something to do with equity. So kind of just think about it in terms of breaking it down by the stakeholders who would donate and the amount that they would donate, and then find the reward that matches them.
And I think separate your focus groups then as well for those different networks, so that you're not sharing all of those ideas with everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, well, unless there are any other questions, we'll bring it to a close shortly after our intended time. So just to very quickly skip back to presentation. So I had one last slide, which is where next, and have this kind of motivational quote to start us off, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we really think that, you know, trying to build a kind of volunteer team or paid team around this campaign is going to be a really big asset to you. Also think there's a whole amount of learning. We heard Anne talking about finding similar campaigns that have gone before. So either have a browse of Kickstarter, have a browse of our page on Kickstarter, or we've even built a kind of list of crowdfunded social enterprises that you can check out there. And next steps with us. So in order to get to our pitching and marketing workshops, which are going to be held on the 1st and 2nd week of October, you need to have filled out your RSA Catalyst application, and you can get that from the webpage there, thersa.org/catalyst. And if you've got any other questions, get in touch with us, but we'll send around this presentation and probably make these points nice and clear to you in that email tomorrow.
Yes. And then obviously, if you have any questions for us after this workshop about some of the content or anything else, just share them with us and we'll do our best to help you.
Okay, and I think, okay, very quick question here. What stage do projects need to be at to attend the pitching marketing workshops? So these vary from people, so we think it's valuable if you have a first draft of your crowdfunding pitch We don't, and that, as I said, you might have two different pitches in mind, but we think if you haven't kind of gone through what the gist of what you're trying to do is in terms of a ballpark number, what you would spend it on, some ideas for rewards, and they don't have to be more than ideas, they can just be different ideas. So we do think you need to have that in place. But in terms of stage of how established you are, you don't have to have sold any of your products, you don't have to have built a 10,000 Twitter following to come into our workshops. So I hope that answers that, Luke.
I just have to going off on a little bit of a tangent, because obviously there's the marketing, there's the pitching, and just the general support that you get. But obviously the business model is an important aspect.
Yep.
If you have an idea, you want to press it, 5-10 year plan. So do we get any support in relation to? Because I know nothing about business models at all. But
So actually we do have a model that we use with an exercise example, so you can see how to work through it. So we give you a model that you can work from. If you wanted to work slightly differently, that's absolutely fine. All we want you to have the ability to do when it comes to the pitching workshop is to articulate clearly what your crowdfunding campaign is and what you're offering and who you want to reach. And really it's just so that you can get the feedback you need to help you define what that is.
But actually it is worth re-emphasising that point. One of the things we do ask you to prepare is a kind of bullet pointed out in a A4 page business model canvas, we'll call them, where you kind of look at your target audiences, the different products, and out roughly how you price it. So the business, and that.
The tools we're giving you don't presume a certain level of expertise. They're designed to help everyone be able to map out what their business model would look like.
And it's okay to use a different business model
if you want to do that, whatever works for you.
Because I can do the alternative, I just can't do the conventional.
Absolutely fine.
Can I ask a very simple question and a more complicated one? On your slides, Alex, you had the website www.crowdfunded. And it looked to me as though the rest of the web address had been blocked. That is a complete web address. Okay. The second question is about an obstacle that I have found with some funding organisations, the two things I'm talking about, which is that the greater part of the funds that I'm trying to raise are actually needed as fees to external consultants. Some people do not like doing that. They want to pay for your time, for sundry costs of various kinds, or for direct community benefits, but actually they don't particularly want to pay fees to deliver a product. What's your experience of that?
So our advice tends to be as transparent as you can,
Just be transparent,
and put a rationale as to why you need to, why these people's time is the time that's going to really help you deliver what you want to do. And I think it's better that than having a kind of 5k hole in your budget that no one really knows what they're putting the money into.
Or to appear like you don't have the expertise to deliver the work you want to do.
Some people will be like, great, they're getting in, the best minds in that field.
And we do have fellows that have needed to cost for consultancy fees. And certainly there are people working on crowdfunding campaigns with us who are building that in as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Great. We are running late, so I think unless anyone has any pressing questions, we might draw this to a close and get in touch with you tomorrow about how you can follow up with us.
Big thanks to Anne for
thank you, Anne.
Thank you. And if you have any more questions for me, feel free to send them my way too.
Thank you. This has been really helpful for us, and I've also learned.
Thank you, Anne. That was really helpful. Okay, all right.
Thank you, everyone, for your time, and looking forward to hearing from you.
See ya.